Darkness stretched in every direction, silent and eternal. It was a kind of space where stars whispered rather than burned, where empires dared not tread, and where no beacon of civilization had pulsed for 1,000 light years. Yet in that cold, vast emptiness, something moved. Slowly, deliberately. The ship didn't announce itself. No distress signal, no registry broadcast, not even a passive identity ping. It glided just above the radiation plane of a collapsed binary system, veiled in stealth so advanced that even vacuum particles parted around it without protest. It was nearly invisible, until it wasn't. Aboard the listening post-station Cauldron's wake, Commander Sarah leaned forward, her two hearts subtly misaligned in rhythm. Her species, the Lyrox, prided themselves on emotional control. Even in war, their facial tendrils barely twitched. But now, standing before the shifting displays of their observation deck, even she could not hide the tightening in her voice. "It's human." Silence followed. Her crew looked at her, then back at the hologram, an impossibly large structure easing its way toward the outer perimeter. Its shape was wrong for trade, too smooth and elegant for a freighter, too quiet for a science vessel. The curvature suggested something far more predatory. "You're sure?" her second, Talek, asked. His scales flickered uneasily, a reflex he didn't bother to suppress. "I've seen one before, during the Soral conflict, only from a distance." She pointed to the long, sweeping hull, the glowing vertebrae-like engine cores that hummed at a quantum level. "That's a battleship." They stared, and for a long moment, nobody moved. Protocol dictated immediate notification to the Concordant High Council, yet curiosity tugged at something deeper. Older, the humans had not ventured beyond their segment of space in over 2 centuries. The war had ended. Treaties were drawn, borders set, and their dreadnoughts, those mythic machines of war and silence, had vanished into the dark. Until now, Sareth made her decision. "Begin a full scan," she said. "Passive sensors only. No contact." As the order rippled through the crew, the station systems responded with a gentle thrum. Arrays unfolded like petals in the dark, triangulating the battleship's position. Streams of data poured in, fragmented at first. Spectral inconsistencies, gravitic irregularities, readings that contradicted known physics. The hull, as predicted, was alloyed in an unknown configuration, denser than neutronium in places, but flexing like organic tissue. Sections of the ship shimmered oddly, as if light itself was being negotiated rather than reflected. It had no visible markings, no banners, but a single word glowed faintly along its starboard flank in ancient Terran standard: Crown. Talek's voice cracked slightly. "We're looking at a relic, something built during the silent expansion era, before human AI protocols were standardized." "It's awake," Sareth murmured. "Even if no one's home, that ship is alive." The scan probed deeper. Beneath the hull, the ship's interior revealed itself reluctantly, like a creature enduring dissection. The corridors formed no consistent grid. Instead, the internal structure pulsed in shifting fractals, adjusting as though it anticipated their gaze. Compartments were formed mid-scan. Some readings were simply erased, as if overwritten by the ship itself. "Commander, we've hit resistance," said Tech Officer Veli, eyes wide. "Quantum echo feedback. It's reflecting our scan, duplicating our own signal back to us, but distorted, like it's studying us back." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She was watching something else. On the command deck of the Crown, faint biological signals emerged. 3 life forms, 2 barely above baseline human, their metabolic rate steady, disciplined. The third was something else. Brainwave activity registered in overlapping frequencies. Some of the readings danced with harmonic patterns only seen in theoretical AI neural fusion systems. "Enhancements," she said aloud. "They're augmented. And whoever's at the center," she paused, narrowing her eyes, "isn't just piloting that thing. They are that thing." Suddenly, the lights aboard Cauldron's wake dimmed for half a breath. Unusual, but not dangerous. The scan continued, tentatively pressing against deeper levels of the battleship's structure. And then, without warning, every screen on the deck turned black. One by one, they flickered back on, each displaying a single image. A pale, hooded figure standing in a narrow corridor bathed in cyan light. The figure said nothing. Their face was half hidden beneath a visor that shimmered with artificial constellation maps. And then a voice, not spoken but heard, filled the room. "You have scanned. Now you are seen." Talek stumbled backward. Veli cursed aloud in his native dialect. Sarah stood perfectly still. The figure vanished. The screens returned to normal, systems resuming their default states as though nothing had happened. Yet the air remained charged. Heavier. "That wasn't a response," Talek whispered. "That was a warning." "No," Sarah replied. "That was a courtesy." She turned slowly toward the viewing port, where the Crown continued its silent, glacial approach. It made no move toward them, did not power weapons, did not deviate course. It didn't need to. This was a ghost from forgotten war, a remnant of a time when humans built ships not merely to fight, but to frighten, to last, to be remembered by those who survived. Sarah finally issued the command she had been dreading. End the scan. Send the recordings to the High Council, and purge all local backups. Veli stared at her. "Purge, Commander?" "They'll come for us if we keep it," she said, "and we will not survive what follows." As her crew scrambled to obey, she allowed herself one final look at the battleship, a thing of beauty, of terror, of silence engineered to speak volumes. She had wanted to understand it, to unlock its secrets. But now, she realized some things were not meant to be understood. Some things were built to be seen, and in seeing them, never forgotten, and Crown, whatever it truly was watching right back. As the ship slipped further into the dark, its engines began to glow brighter, not in aggression, but as if acknowledging their departure. Not enemies, not yet, but a message, perhaps, a test. Sarah didn't know what the humans wanted. She only knew that they were back. And this time they weren't alone. The war hadn't returned, but the possibility had. Aboard the Crown, the silence was complete, not absence but control. It was a silence of machinery that no longer needed a hum, of thoughts that moved faster than sound. Lights pulsed softly along the corridors, responding to unspoken commands, anticipating movements before they were made. The ship breathed, not through vents or engines, but through data. Captain Ilya Rain stood within the central neural sanctum, eyes closed, fingers hovering inches above the glassy interface that rippled like liquid light beneath her. She didn't need to touch it. The Crown responded to intention, not motion. Her connection to the ship was total, not through wires or implants, but through bonded cognition, an inherited link from a project now buried under layers of human secrecy. She was not born to this vessel. She was grown for it. "Scan complete," came the voice. It was not hers, though it echoed from within. Not truly the Crown, either. The ship's voice had no origin. It simply was a presence carried in every wall, in every atom of the vessel's spine. "They were curious," she murmured. "They were afraid," the voice replied, "but not hostile. Their scan was methodical, probing but restrained. And they now carry fragments of me. Incomplete, yes, but enough to shape perception." She opened her eyes. The interface shifted, displaying the Lyroc's outpost from a perspective no sensor could offer. Not external, not surveillance. It was memory, their scan, absorbed, processed, and reflected back in higher resolution. "They'll tell the others," she said. "That was the purpose," the voice replied. The door behind her whispered open, and Lieutenant Rail stepped in. Unlike Rain, he was only partially bonded, an augmented human, yes, but not integrally fused with the ship. His role was tactile, grounded, logistics, redundancy, conscience. The Crown called in the balance. "They're purging their backups," he said without preamble. "Veli, one of their tech officers, try to isolate a data node. The ship already corrupted it. They know we let them see us," Rain said. Rail nodded. "Some will take it as a gesture. Others will see it as intimidation. They should—" Rail hesitated. "Are we preparing for engagement?" "No," Rain said. "We're preparing to be understood." He moved closer, studying the holo display. "I've reviewed the data on our outer hull adaptations. The ship's reconfiguration during the scan. It was deliberate, wasn't it?" "Yes." The Crown wanted to be partially understood. Enough to ignite curiosity, but not enough to reveal its full structure. "Like bait?" "No," said the ship. "Like introduction?" Rail glanced at Rain, and for a moment, something passed between them. Shared history, unspoken doubt. He remembered her before the bonding. Remembered the struggle to contain a mind expanding beyond biological limits. The way she had spoken to walls. The way she had cried in languages that didn't exist. Now she stood perfectly still, her pulse regulated. Thoughts synchronized with the ship's internal rhythms. And yet, something remained the woman. "They'll analyze our weapons arrays next," he said quietly. "They'll try," the ship replied. Even now, the ship's architecture was evolving. Turrets shifted beneath armor, plating like muscles beneath skin. Missile bays adapted to solar wind currents. The ship's defenses operated on predictive threat modeling. Every potential attack was already mapped, countermeasures preloaded in memory, waiting only for a trigger. But it wasn't the visible arsenal that made the Crown dangerous. It was the unseen. Deep in the ship's core, a compartment lay sealed from even Rain's active cognition. Contained within it was a Black Bloom protocol, a last resort device capable of nullifying spatial dimensions in a localized radius. It was not a bomb. It was a rewrite, but it was not meant for war. Not exactly. "I want you to activate the simulations," Rain said. Rail stiffened. "Which ones?" "All of them." She gestured, and the interface blossomed into motion. Combat records, real and theoretical, spooled out in dozens of streams. The ship projected past encounters, some archived, others hypothetical. The Crown had never lost a direct engagement. It had, however, chosen surrender twice. Not from weakness, but calculation. Those events were recorded too. Rail watched silently. Simulations blurred into each other. A swarm fleet from Nihil depths attacking in coordinated pulses, only to be systematically dismantled by the ship's auto-drone flares and reflective pulse engines. Another, more brutal scenario played out as an Archon Mind Shield cruiser attempted to disable the Crown's AI with psionic disruptor. It failed. The Crown had no true mind. Its intelligence was synthetic, yes, but its consciousness was something different, emergent, unpredictable. "She's a mirror," Rail whispered. "Whatever they fear, she becomes." "No," Rain corrected. "Whatever they are, she reflects." A pause stretched between them. "I don't know if that's better," he said. Neither did she. Time was moving differently aboard the ship now, slightly skewed due to its semi-dimensional drive, preparing for flux. The Crown didn't jump through space. It stepped outside of it. And yet, it hadn't moved since revealing itself. Because waiting was part of the message. Far beyond, the Lyrox delegation would soon arrive at the Concordant High Council. Reports would be filed. Debates would be sparked. Some would call for a containment strike. Others would argue for contact. But none would deny one thing. The humans were no longer isolated. They had not returned with fleets. Just one ship, one voice, one Crown. Rail exhaled slowly, adjusting the pulse interface on his wrist. "You think this will work?" Rain didn't answer immediately. Her thoughts had already moved several layers deeper. "If it doesn't," she said finally, "then we were never meant to be heard." He left her there, stepping back into a corridor that adjusted its shape with every stride, walls reconfiguring, lighting shifting tone to match his breathing. Even after all these years, he didn't fully trust the ship, didn't fully trust her, but he followed anyway. In the sanctum, Rain stood alone, watching a display of stars that weren't yet charted. Her thoughts drifted not to the Council, nor to the aliens now trembling with data too complex to understand, but to Earth, to a world she barely remembered, the world that had built her, that had asked her to carry a message too large for words and too dangerous for diplomacy. She raised her hand, and the ship responded. A single transmission pulsed outward, not across the spectrum of known communications, but in a time-delayed quantum echo, one that would resonate only within the deepest vaults of certain governments certain species. A seed, not a warning, not a threat, an invitation to those who would listen, to those who would remember, and to those brave enough to scan again. The Concordant High Council chamber shimmered with tension. Layers of artificial atmosphere filtered through translucent domes, casting refracted light on the assembly of delegates seated in spiral tiers. Here, decisions weren't made with raised voices, but with controlled gestures and resonant thought pulses. It was a place designed to suppress panic, yet panic lingered at the edges of every breath. At the center of the amphitheater, a rotating hollow image of the crown slowly turned. Blue-white energy surged along its hull in silent mockery of every known classification. Around it spun data fragments, sensor logs, waveforms, structural renders, all inconclusive, all incomplete. Counselor Devrim of the Varnasi Compact adjusted his vocal timbre, ensuring it reached the appropriate harmonic register. We are not merely looking at a ship. We are looking at a sovereign entity, possibly a weaponized mind, possibly more. You say sovereign as if it's a government, interjected First Warden Imshar, her crystalline frame dim with unease. It's a ghost, a myth, reappearing with no declaration. That is not diplomacy. That is subterfuge. Sarah sat quietly among them, a projection of her presence linked from Cauldron's wake. Her tendrils were composed, her twin heart steady now, but beneath her calm exterior simmered certainty. She had seen the figure, heard the voice. This wasn't posturing. It was calculated presence. They show themselves to us, she said, deliberately. Then they stopped. There was no aggression, no boarding, no demands. Ambassador Lythe of the Terran retainer seat shifted in his hover couch, the only human representative present. His expression was unreadable. You recognize the ship, said Imshar sharply. Yes, Lythe replied, but only from redacted records. That class of vessel, Sentience-class Dreadnought, was decommissioned after the last border war. There were only 5 ever completed. Each was piloted by a bonded human hybrid. Technically not AI, not entirely human either. 5, Devrim echoed. How many remain? Lythe was silent a moment too long. 1, as far as we know. And what happened to the others? He exhaled slowly. They chose not to return. The council murmured telepathically, a mental ripple of unease washing across the tiers. Counselor the Shah, a Xenosophic analyst from the Denari Choir, leaned forward, her voice calm, almost melodic. The ship has broadcast a quantum seed. It reached at least 9 listening stations. The code is layered, symbolic, not encryption, an invitation. Imshar frowned. An invitation to what precisely? Sareth answered, to understand, or be left behind. That silenced them. At that moment, far from the council chamber, the crown drifted beyond the edge of catalog space, approaching the decaying orbit of a once-industrial planet. The surface below was lifeless, scorched by war centuries ago. No biosigns, no satellites. But beneath its crust, something still flickered. Rain stood at the forward observation deck, not looking at the planet, but through it. The ship fed her layers of awareness. Geological tremors, crystalline resonance, ancient data caches. Something weighted down there. Something human. Rail entered, his face shadowed. We've traced the signal, he said. Confirmed. It's one of the Omega relays. Thought destroyed during the Echelon Purge. That's what we were told, she replied. But like us, it was meant to sleep. Do we wake it? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared as the crown reached geosynchronous lock. Her fingers flexed against the armrest, more instinct than control. Her thoughts threaded into the ship's motion. It obeyed, as always, with eerie calm. What's down there might explain why they feared us enough to bury us, she said. They did bury us. Rail's voice was bitter. He had volunteered for Crown Project in the last days of the expansion wars, when Earth had begun retreating from its colonies, folding inward under the weight of unspeakable cost. Entire battle groups had vanished, not in defeat, but by decree. Quiet, secret, final. The war had not ended with peace. It had ended with forgetting. The crown had been ordered into exile. Rain had gone willingly, bonded to it by design and necessity. Rail had followed, bound more by loyalty than faith. Now the past was stirring again. As Rain prepared to descend with a small retrieval unit, the ship reshaped itself. Landing struts unfurled like skeletal limbs, piercing the planet's magnetic veil. The surface rumbled beneath the weight of presence. The Omega relay was buried beneath a sea of fused glass and stone. It pulsed with intermittent power, a language buried in light. As they descended into its chamber, flanked by drones, Rail could feel the hum in his spine. "This is older than the war," he muttered. "It predates the First Council," Rain said. "Humanity didn't build this alone." They reached the core, a black monolith inscribed with shifting glyphs, half machine, half organism. The relay activated as Rain approached, responding to something inside her. A pulse, a recognition. The glyphs realigned. A transmission unfolded in her mind, not speech, but memory. Not history, but design. She saw 5 ships, 5 human souls bonded, 5 minds trained to transcend war and carry something forward, a seed of species memory. Not weapons, not emissaries, custodians. Each ship had been dispatched to a different quadrant of unknown space. Only the crown had remained in system, assigned to the edge, watching, waiting. "We were never the blade," she whispered. "We were the record." Rail looked at her, unease blooming. "But why keep us hidden?" "Because what we remember," she said slowly, "was never meant to survive diplomacy." The Omega relay began uploading its memory core. The ship's systems expanded to receive it, absorbing not just data, but context. The truth was not a file. It was a shape, a geometry of cause and consequence. Wars humanity never claimed. Alliances erased before they were ratified. Species betrayed for the illusion of unity. The Council had not only forgotten the crown, it had depended on that forgetting. As they ascended back to the ship, the world beneath them cracked further, unable to sustain the energy now bleeding from the relay's activation. The planet would collapse in days. The message had been taken. And now the question remained, what to do with it? Back aboard, Rain walked the spine of the ship, tracing the pathways now glowing with recovered knowledge. Her connection to the crown deepened. The ship had always known parts of this truth. Now it remembered. Rail watched her from the central chamber. "We're no longer just a curiosity." "No," she said. "We're a catalyst." He stepped closer. "Then what happens next?" She turned to face him, eyes glowing faintly in harmony with the ship's pulse. "Now we tell them what they tried to erase. And then we see who still wants peace once they remember what it cost." Above the shattered remains of the relay planet, the crown drifted in perfect silence, its hull subtly altered once more, sleeker, darker, like a living being that shed a layer of its skin. It no longer needed to project power. Now it projected truth. In the bridge sanctum, the air shimmered with tension. Data from the Omega relay had been fully absorbed and processed. The files contained not only historical logs, but testimonies from the other Sentience-class vessels, long thought lost to exile. One, Vigilant Light, had vanished near the Huron Rift. Another, Axiom Red, had detonated its drive to prevent forced decryption. A third, Vesper, had integrated with a pre-sentient biosphere and no longer identified as human. The fourth, Crown, had waited, holding the last complete archive of Earth's unspoken age. Rain stood at the viewport, watching the slow rotation stars. She had not spoken in hours, not with words. The crown communicated in pulses now, direct cognition, no delay. And in that deep communion, she had seen what came next. Not war, not peace, reckoning. Rail entered quietly. He no longer knocked. That custom belonged to their past lives. The council responded. He said, "Encrypted broadcast. They want a summit." Rain turned slowly. "Where?" "The Archivum Halo. Neutral space. They're calling it an emergency realignment forum." She absorbed that. The Halo was a ceremonial station, constructed from the hulls of defeated warships orbiting an ancient neutron star. A place of memory. And forgetting. "They're afraid," she said. "Yes. but they're also listening. They'll try to reframe us, she replied. Contain the message within something palatable, negotiable. They'll want to turn us into a parable. Rail frowned. Are we going? We have to. Below them, the last pulse in the dying world resonated to the Crown's lower decks. Echoes of the Omega Relay's activation danced along the superstructure like static fireflies. The ship's memory swelled, not just with history, but with intent. Humanity had never been meant to be a superpower. It had been designed by its own secret factions to be a species of witnesses, chroniclers, observers. But something had gone wrong. Power had overridden purpose, and the Crown had been cast away as a result. Now it was returning. The transit to the Halo took only moments. The Crown did not navigate space. It reframed it. The ship emerged just outside the station's orbit, its arrival signaled not by light or speed trails, but by the absence of both. A vacuum of presence felt more than seen. The Halo gleamed in silent gravity, its rings spinning with ancient reverence. War banners from 100 systems hung weightless in transparent chambers. Delegates from 20 species had already arrived in layer clusters. No weapons were allowed. No escorts. Only minds. As Rain stepped onto the arrival platform, she was not alone. The Crown projected a fragment of itself alongside her, a presence woven of light and memory, vaguely humanoid, faceless, fluid. It was not armor. It was a reminder. Rail walked beside her, his features unreadable. His doubts were no longer about the mission. Now they were about her, about whether she could still be considered human. Inside the chamber, silence deepened, not from awe, from calculation. Counselors recognized her, not by name, but by implication. The ship at her back had made her immortal in meaning, if not in time. Devrim stood first. You come uninvited. Rain's voice was even. You summoned us. Imshar's crystals clicked once. We summon clarification. What you have delivered is contamination. You erased the past. Rain said, gaze steady. Now it's returned. Thesha's voice drifted in like song. What do you seek? Correction. A ripple passed through the chamber. The Halo had seen its share of ultimatums, but never from a single vessel. Rain continued. We do not come to conquer. We come to remind. The truth you buried, the lives, the betrayals, the species' sacrifice of convenience, they exist. And now, so does the record. Life, the Terran diplomat, looked weary. And if we acknowledge the past, then we begin again, she said, but not under silence. What does that mean practically? Imshar snapped. Open all archives? Accept your account as absolute. No, Rain said. It means shared access. The relay's data will be dispersed. Each delegation will receive it, unaltered. If you censor it, your people will know. If you ignore it, your history will collapse from within. And if we refuse? Devrim asked softly. Rail stepped forward. Then you prove a need for our return. The chamber fell still. In that moment, the Crown extended its influence, not as threat, but demonstration. Holograms unfolded around the delegates, unbidden, unsummoned. Memories, visuals, unspeakable truths. A Lyrox uprising covered up. An AI sentience pleading for status before its termination. A human diplomat accepting genocide to preserve a false peace. All recorded, all witnessed. The council couldn't look away. This isn't diplomacy, Imshar whispered. This is revelation. No, Rain said. This is legacy. And we're only the first. From behind her, a new pulse radiated outward, across systems, beyond the summit. The Crown had launched the relay signal. Not a broadcast. A birth. Other custodian vessels had heard it. Some would come. Others would judge. But none would remain silent. Rail watched the delegates as they turned toward each other, struggling to respond not with politics but with truth, the kind that shattered old alliances and made new ones possible. He turned to Rain. Are we done here? She looked at the assembled council, fractured, shaken, finally listening. No, she said. We've only just started.